Okay, so a lot of people struggle with getting an iPad that gives them everything that they want and need, but without overspending. Because sure, you can just buy the iPad Pro and get everything, but do you actually need it? Well, here's every current iPad plus one more that I think you should consider. So let's talk about the important differences, and this way you have all the information that you need to choose the right iPad for you. So starting out, we have the iPad 11 or iPad with A16 as you'll see it on the Apple website. And this iPad sells for $349, which is $100 less than the previous model. And that's a pretty crazy value considering that it actually got some important updates. Now, as far as design, it looks essentially the same as last year's model. We don't have the larger bezels on the top and the bottom like with the iPad 9. We're getting rounded corners, squared off edges, and it comes in some super fun colors. I chose the pink, which is the same one that I got last time. I love it. And the easiest way to tell these two apart is that the newer model no longer says iPad on the back. We're getting 4 speaker grills, but there's only 2 speakers, one on each side. So you're getting stereo sound when you're watching content, and when you're gaming, you can actually detect where sounds are coming from. For biometric authentication, we're getting a fingerprint sensor built into the power button, and the charging and accessory port is USB-C, so we have support for more powerful accessories. Now, as far as Apple Pencil compatibility, it's compatible with the USB-C version of the Apple Pencil and the first generation Pencil, which charges and pairs via Lightning. Now, if you choose to go with the first generation Pencil, you'll need to use a USB-C to Lightning adapter in order to charge and pair the Apple Pencil with your iPad, and you can't store the pencil on the side of the iPad. For a keyboard case, Apple offers the Magic Keyboard Folio, which is compatible with this iPad and the iPad 10. Has excellent keys, they're great to type on, and the trackpad is right up there with the regular Magic Keyboard as the best trackpads on any keyboard case. Now, I love the fact that you can remove the keyboard while still protecting the back of the iPad if you want to use it in tablet mode, or you can actually flip the keyboard over and reattach it so that when you fold it behind a display, you're not pressing the keys. Now, there's no protection for the sides or the corners, and it sells for $249, which I still think is a fairly expensive accessory for an entry-level iPad. Now, this year we got a 20% bump in performance with the A16 Bionic chip, and now we have 6 gigs of RAM. So you could do things like edit 4K video or collaborate on large group projects without an issue. We're seeing impressive single and multi-core performance, as well as improved GPU performance when we compare it with the previous model. And with this more capable chip, you should have no issues playing more resource-intensive games. And when it comes to productivity, you're getting pretty much every available iPad OS feature with split view, slide over windows, and a lot of the new features in iPad OS 18. And I'm working on a dedicated video to show you all those features. Now, it does work with Sidecar and Universal Control, and really the only things that you're missing are Stage Manager and Apple Intelligence. The display is now an 11-inch Liquid Retina sRGB display. It's a very good True Tone display, especially at this lower price, but it's not a fully laminated display, so we're still getting an air gap. The iPad 11 supports Wi-Fi 6, and like all the other current models, the cellular version supports 5G. And I'll talk about all the cameras towards the end of the video. Now, as far as configuration, we're seeing an important update where the base model now comes with 128 gigabytes instead of 64 gigabytes on the previous version. And together with the 256 gigabyte option, we now have a model with 512 gigs, which is a first for the base iPad. And that means that you don't need to get a more expensive iPad with features that you may not need just to get more internal storage. The 256 gigabyte model sells for $449 and the 512 sells for $649. Now, next we have the smallest iPad, the iPad Mini 7, which starts out at $499 for 128 gigabytes. It has a similar design to the iPad 11, so again, we're getting 4 speaker grills, but only 2 speakers, one on each side. There's a USB-C port for charging and accessories. Now, this is USB-C 3 versus USB-C 2 on the iPad 11, so we're getting up to 10 gigabits per second versus 480 megabits per second. Now, as far as stylus, the iPad Mini 7 is compatible with the Apple Pencil Pro, which pairs and charges on the side of the iPad, and it's compatible with the Apple Pencil USB-C version, which I'm sure you can guess charges and pairs via USB-C. In terms of user experience, both have the same feel, but the Apple Pencil Pro has additional features like pressure sensitivity, wireless pairing and charging, double tap to change tools, barrel roll to rotate the orientation of shaped pen and brush tools, squeeze to open palette, haptic feedback, and Find My. Now, the screen is an 8.3-inch 60Hz liquid retina display, but it's a P3 display, which is a wider color gamut, and it's more color accurate than the iPad 11. It also has an anti-reflective coating, which is nice if you plan on using it outside or in areas where you might have to deal with bright lights. We're also getting Apple Pencil hover support, which gives you an indicator of the position of the pencil when it's hovering over the display, and it also interacts with different UI elements. On top of that, unlike iPad 11, iPad mini has a fully laminated display, so there's no air gap, and the display, the touch layer, and the cover glass are fused together into a single display assembly. This means that the image looks like it's printed right on top of the glass, and when you're using the Apple Pencil, the tip of the pencil will look like it's touching the content that's being created. We have Touch ID incorporated into the power button, and as far as performance, we're getting the A17 Pro chip with 8 GB of RAM. The single and multi-core performance improvements are pretty significant when compared with iPad 11, but they will mostly be noticeable when you're doing the most resource-intensive tasks or playing super demanding games. And even if you don't plan on doing those, it's always great to have additional headroom in terms of performance, which will keep the device running fast as it gets older. Now, this more powerful chip also means that you're getting Apple Intelligence on iPad mini, and as more of those features get released, you should have full support. Now, before getting my first iPad mini, I wasn't really sure that I was going to like it because I thought it was too close in size to my iPhone. But I absolutely love this device. It's noticeably bigger than a phone when I'm using it. It's super fun to game on, especially for long periods of time or if you have small hands, and it's incredibly portable. Now, as far as configuration options, we have the same choice that we had with iPad 11. So starting out with 128 GB and going all the way up to 512. Now, as usual, there's no real great keyboard case for iPad mini because it would just be too small. The keyboard would be uncomfortable, but of course you can always use an external keyboard. All right, so now we're getting to the higher end iPads, and I love that Apple simplified things by essentially offering the same set of features on the 2 iPad Air models, and the same is true for the 2 iPad Pro models. So first we have the iPad Air 7, which comes in 2 sizes, the 11-inch that sells for $599, and then the 13-inch that sells for $799. And both of them start out with 120 GB and go all the way up to 1 TB. Both displays are P3 displays with an anti-reflective coating, just like what we saw on the iPad mini 7, and they're fully laminated displays, so there is no air gap. Now, both displays are 60 Hz, they support Apple Pencil hover, and the main differences are the higher resolution on the 13-inch model and a higher brightness for SDR content. Now, once again, we're getting 4 speaker grills, but only 2 speakers, and both have more rich and full audio than iPad 11 or the iPad mini 7. Now, we're seeing the more powerful USB 3 USB-C port that we got with the iPad mini with support for higher data transfer speeds and more powerful displays. And the same Touch ID is incorporated into the power button. For accessories, the iPad Air 7 is compatible with the Apple Pencil Pro, the Apple Pencil USB-C, and it's also compatible with the Magic Keyboard for iPad Air. Like the rest of the Magic Keyboard lineup, this keyboard has fantastic keys, an excellent trackpad, and it offers a USB-C port for charging the iPad Air, which leaves the iPad port free for other accessories. Looking at performance, we're getting a significant improvement with the M3 chip and 8 gigs of RAM. This chip is massively powerful. It can easily handle very demanding video editing and pretty much anything you could possibly throw at it. Now, most people will never push this chip to the absolute limit, but again, it means that this iPad will continue to be fast even after years of use. You have all the multitasking features of the previous iPads and everything that the latest iPad OS has to offer. You're getting Apple Intelligence, but you also have Stage Manager. Now, I don't really use the majority of the features in Stage Manager on the iPad itself, but it does let you mirror your iPad onto an external display without black bars on the left and the right, if that's something that you're looking to do. You can also extend your display and use the external display as a second monitor, so you can actually move apps and windows and get a true dual display setup, which helps you be more productive. Now, speaking of that, I'm always going to choose the larger display when it comes to productivity, and it's nice that we don't have to upgrade to the iPad Pro just to get a 13-inch display. Now, regardless of which iPad you get, I absolutely recommend that you protect it with a case. The ESR Flip magnetic case doesn't just protect your iPad from every angle, it has multiple viewing angles so you can always see your content. It has a very stable writing mode, which saves you from having to lean over and hurt your neck. It has a portrait view mode that is perfect for vertical browsing, and it protects your Apple Pencil from coming loose in your bag. If you're looking for more functionality, then check out the Rebound magnetic keyboard case. It has a stable magnetic stand so you can easily attach and detach your iPad, plus control the viewing angle. It has backlit keys so you can work in any lighting conditions, and it has a multifunctional trackpad that has full gesture support. And if you want to protect your iPad display, the UltraFit Classic Screen Protector might be the easiest screen protector to install. It's a super simple two-step process, and because the iPad isn't exposed during installation, you get a bubble and dust-free application every single time. So if you want peace of mind knowing that your iPad is safe, check out the links in the description, and thank you to ESR for sponsoring this portion of the video. All right, so now we get to the king of iPads, iPad Pro. And again, it's great that we have an 11 and a 13-inch model that come with the same features, and this way you can just choose whichever size works best for your needs. As far as displays, these are Ultra Retina XDR displays, and they use what Apple calls tandem OLED, which is essentially two stacked OLED layers that combine to create a brighter overall image. And this isn't just important when looking at HDR content, where we get 1000 nits of max full screen brightness and 1600 nits peak brightness. Because even for SDR content, which is just regular videos that you might be watching, and then just everyday use of the iPad, we're getting 1000 nits of brightness versus 600 on the 13-inch iPad Air and 500 on every other current iPad. We're also getting ProMotion with the iPad Pro, which is Apple's adaptive refresh rate of up to 120 Hz, and this way things like UI animations and scrolling look super smooth. And then games that support 120 FPS can be played at the highest setting. So personally, if I have a choice, I'm always going to choose iPad Pro when I play PUBG because I can go all the way up to 120 FPS, which gives me the smoothest gameplay. There's also a nano texture glass option for the iPad Pro, which is outstanding in challenging lighting environments. It's available in the 1 and 2 terabyte models, and it costs an additional $100. Now around the edge, we see 4 speaker grills, but now we're actually getting 4 speakers. So in addition to sounding fuller and having more presence than the previous models, they also respond to the orientation of the iPad, and they provide more of a surround sound feel. The USB-C port is now Thunderbolt/USB 4 port with even faster data transfer speed. This can be useful if you're transferring very large video files or a ton of photos. We also have Apple Pencil Pro and Apple Pencil USB-C compatibility and compatibility with the Magic Keyboard for iPad Pro. For biometric authentication, instead of Touch ID, we have Face ID with the True Depth front-facing camera, and I really like the fact that I can just pick up my iPad, swipe up, and start using it. Now, as far as configurations, both iPad Pro models start out with 256 gigabytes, which is twice the other iPads, and they go all the way up to 2 terabytes. The 256 and 512 gigabyte models come with 8 gigs of RAM, and then the 2 larger models come with 16. Now, as far as performance, you're definitely getting the most powerful chip in any tablet, the M4. So clearly benchmark scores are going to be insane, and this thing absolutely screams. Now, in addition to the camera system, we're also getting a LiDAR scanner. So if that's something that you need for your workflow, it's absolutely a reason to get an iPad Pro. Now let's quickly talk about the camera systems, because all the current iPads have a 12 megapixel ultra-wide front-facing camera with center stage. Now that's a feature that uses AI to identify and track a subject as it moves through the frame, and it really gives your video calls a more dynamic feel. Now, as far as the rear-facing cameras, I mostly use those for scanning documents because I always have my phone with me to take pictures and shoot video. So while the iPad Pro absolutely has the most advanced camera system, that isn't really a reason for me to upgrade. Now, if you plan on creating content with it and you want ProRes, or as I mentioned before, if you need a LiDAR scanner, then that's another story. Now, the one other iPad that I want to mention is iPad 10, which comes with a slightly less powerful chip than the newer iPad 11, but it can be purchased for $269, which is $80 less than the iPad 11. Now, I would keep in mind that while the lower processing power may not matter to a lot of basic users, the base model of the iPad 10 only comes with 64 gigabytes of storage versus 128 on the iPad 11. If you're only using this device to stream content, to browse the web, and for social media, that may not matter, but if you game or if you use other large apps, you may want to skip the iPad 10 and get yourself the 11. Now you should check out this comparison, click on my face to subscribe. You know what I always say, buy it nice or buy it twice. Good luck and see you soon.